Hey folks, I'm Gene Delasala with Audioholics, and we are back on another live YouTube stream this Friday, the 17th at 11:20 p.m. And we got a special guest. I brought in someone to make our videos a little more dynamic. We got Shane Lee. He's from Spare Change. He's got his own YouTube channel. He also does video reviews for us. And that's why I've got Shane here, because he's done 3 video reviews of products I'd like to talk about. So I want to introduce you guys to Shane. Shane, how you doing, my friend?
What's going on, Gene? Happy to be here. Longtime follower of the website. I kind of grew up on your website, so I'm happy to be here.
Thanks. You're making me feel really old.
So what do we do? We're covering the processors that I did.
Yeah, we've got, guys, I know the year is still young or moderately young, but you've covered actually 3 of the 4 products that I'd like to talk about. I'm in the process of covering the Yamaha CX-A5200. I've spent about a year with the 5100. The 5200 is just the newer model, has some newer features, but the base core of it is very similar. And that's why I thought it'd be relevant to discuss that processor with the ones you've covered. And we could give guys, everybody that's watching, the pros and cons of each product to help them make more educated purchasing decisions. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to look at the little matrix I put together here on the different products. And then you could just kind of give us an overview of what you liked, pros and cons of each that you covered. So let me know, do you see the 2019 AV processor comparison sheet here?
Yeah.
Okay. So guys, here's the 4 products that we were looking at this year, and I just thought it'd be interesting to tabulate the differences in the pros and cons. I highlighted the advantages in yellow for each product category selection here. So the first one we have is the Anthem AVM60. Now this product's been out for a while. We actually have a written review on the Audioholics editorial site, but I wanted Shane to actually take a second look and do a YouTube video for us, and we'll link it down in the description below. He did a video of that one. Then next we have the Marantz AV8805. We also have an editorial on that, and Shane did a YouTube video on it. That one retails for $4,500. The Anthem retails for about $3,000. And then most recently, Shane did a video for us on the NAD, the M17 V2. That was a very recent product. I think that just came out in the last couple of months with all the hardware upgrades on it to get it to Atmos and to do DTSX. In fact, I think you added DTSX while you were doing the review on YouTube for us, if I'm not mistaken.
Actually, no, it came out a week after I sent it back.
Oh, okay. So you did the video, and then we talked. We added the fact that it had DTSX after the fact. You're right. Okay.
I feel that maybe because I called them out on it, and the video dropped, and
they rushed it.
They released it.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm also doing, you're going to see in a week or so, I've got an unboxing video of the Yamaha CX-A5200, and that is a really cool product. I've covered the 5100 and the 5000 in the past. That's actually the cheapest one on the list, and the most expensive one is the NAD one at 6000, whereas the Yamaha is only 2700, and it's built like a tank. So if you look at this tabulation we have here, all of these processors, with the exception of the AV8805, are 11 channel. If you want to go above 11 channel, your only option in this price range right now is the Marantz AV8805. Now, of course, there's the Emotiva RMC1. That's I think a 16 channel processor. It's a little bit more money, but it's still like in kind of a phase where it's some buggy software or hardware going on right now. We don't know what's going on with that. There's no professional reviews of that product. So we're not going to cover that one. We're going to cover the ones that we know and we have direct experience with. So 11 channels of processing, all of these will do it. The Marantz will do 13. So it gives you those extra height channels. You could do 6 height channels. You could do also 15 different speaker configurations if you want. So you can do the voice of God. And in fact, we covered the Denon receiver, the AVR X8500. We just did a review of that one. And the cool thing about that is we covered all 3 formats, Atmos, DTSX, and Aural 3D off of that one box. Even though it only had 13 integrated amplifiers, it had 15 assignable speaker outputs. And Teo, Nicholas, is the one that did the review for us. and he configured his system. He had his ceiling like Swiss cheese. He had a bunch of height channels in there. He had the Voice of God channel. I suggest you guys watch our live YouTube video that we did a couple of weeks ago on that and look at the written review. It's that product is based on this processor. So if you don't need the external amplification, you go with this processor. If you need the internal amplification, you want one box, you go with the Denon AVRX8500. And I think that's about a retail of $4 grand for that product. So that's a really good value if you don't need external amplification. So what really differentiates these products, aside from some of these features here, are the different room correction systems. And I want Shane to definitely talk about some of this as I go over some of the pictures of these products as well, because Shane has direct experience with Anthem's ARC. He's also set up the Odyssey X32 with the receiver editor app. Now he's tested DRAC. That's something I have not directly tested. And I've tested YPOW ever since it's come out, and there's been very incremental improvements to it. So this is where if you're looking for room correction, this is where these products really stand out differently from each other, whereas most of the other features are more similar than they are different. Now the HDMI outputs, you got, or the inputs, you have 8 on all of these products except for the NAD, that only has 5. The Marantz has 3 outputs, as does the Yamaha. So this actually should be bolded yellow as well. Legacy video, there's only, the only one that doesn't support legacy video basically is the Anthem AVM60. So you basically have to use HDMI. You can't use component or composite. But if you've got older source devices that don't have HDMI, you have to figure out a solution to convert it. And then music management, they all have their different music management systems. Anthem uses DTS Play-Fi. Marantz uses the HEOS, which is a Denon technology. NAD uses the Bluos, and Yamaha uses MusicCast. And then the multi-zone features, the most advanced multi-zone feature out of all of them is the Yamaha, because it's got 2 zone outputs, zone 2 and zone 3 with HDMI support. Anthem only has audio support for its second zone. And NAD only has zone 2 with composite video. Now, one advantage that the NAD has is it's a modular design, and Shane will talk a little bit about that. That's a cool thing because most of these products are not hardware upgradable. The only one I know that has the potential to be hardware upgraded is the Marantz. If they change their HDMI board to 2.1, they're claiming, at least on the Denon product, that they have a hardware upgrade for it. I'm pretty sure they'll do it with the AV8805 since it's a similar platform. And then the last thing I'd like to talk about before I turn the mic over to Shane is the build quality of these products. And like I was saying before, the Yamaha is really built like a tank, man. I opened this thing up. It's got a nice toroid in it. It's got a very thick plate on the bottom to minimize resonances from the chassis. It's got a very rigid frame. It's just really well laid out, really good parts in there. The thing weighs as much as a flagship receiver. And all these products are built really well. I'm not really knocking on anyone as being superior over the other just based on weight, but it is interesting to note that the cheapest product here has some of the best build quality, so it's not always price that factors into stuff. So Shane, I want to show these products real quick, and then I want you to talk about your experiences. This is the Marantz AV8805. This is the front of it, and this door opens up, and that's where you get your readout. And Marantz is doing the porthole display on all their stuff now. That's the back of the unit, and as you can see here, tons of connections. You got your component video, you got all your HDMI, you got your balanced inputs as well. So if you want to hook up a high-end, CD player or SACD player, the thing I like about the Marantz is it's got independent dual subwoofer outputs. So you have independent digital delay and independent channel trims on those subwoofer outputs. You can configure them as a mono mix or stereo left-right. That's awesome. I really like to see products that offer that, especially at this price range. Next is the Anthem AVM60. That's the front of it, and this is the back of it. Now this one's got 2 subwoofer outs, but they're parallel. So you're not going to have independent control of those. A little disappointed in that. And this has been out for a while, so I think Anthem is due for a refresh on this product, quite frankly. There's no legacy video support, and I don't think we're ever going to see that from them again. If they're not doing it on this product, I don't think they're going to add it back. probably won't be a problem for most people, but I still rock with a Super VHS, man. I got some videos I haven't transferred to I don't have it on DVD, so I kind of like having some of that legacy video. And then the last one is the Yamaha 5200. Like I said, I'll be doing a formal review of this very soon. And here's the back panel of it. It's a little bit more Spartan than the Marantz one, which I'm surprised.
That's surprising. Look at that.
Yeah, there's a lot of free space here.
Yeah.
This one also has the independent subwoofer outputs, similar to the Marantz, independent delay and control. They both have the rear front subwoofer assignments, which I never recommend using because it only sends LFE to one of them. I don't understand the thinking of why they're doing that. Anytime you have multi-sub, you really want to send LFE to all your subs, and you want to send a mono mix of all the base managed channels to both subs. Otherwise, you don't take advantage of the multi-sub correction or the multi-sub modal averaging. Now, the Yamaha has 3 HDMI outputs. They're all HDCP 2.2. I believe the NAD one only has one of them that's HDCP 2.2. And the Yamaha also gives you the ability to assign those to a zone 2 or zone 3. So that's a really cool feature. If you're doing multi-zone in your home theater, this product really has the advantage compared to the other ones.
Actually, I think the Marantz can also, you can do a separate HDMI feed to a second zone as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, but I guess they both have that. But the Yamaha's got 3 zones. I don't think the Marantz has 3 zones, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it does have 3 zones.
Oh, okay. Well, then I guess they're on equal footing with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for some reason I thought the Marantz only did zone 2 with HDMI. I didn't think it did zone 3. But you know, you can.
No, I think it's just 1 and 2 is HDMI. I think the third one is composite.
Oh, okay. I know there was something different when I was looking at it, but you know, if we're wrong, we could go and annotate later. So the last one we want to go over is the NAD. Now this is it looks like a beautiful product. I mean, the case design on this is pretty awesome.
I love that one.
You said, I'm sorry, say that again.
I love this one. I love the build quality in this one.
Yeah, look, I mean, it looks impressive. It really does. It's not flashy. It's got a nice case here, and the back panel. You could see this is kind of their modular approach, where you could unscrew these and put a new module in. I kind of like that. Integra Research years ago had a modular design with the RDC 7.1, and unfortunately, they abandoned that after a year or two, and it never really took on its full potential. So I'm hoping someone like NAD will live up to the full potential of this modular design and keep offering upgrade solutions rather than having to scrap the thing after 3 or 4 years when things change and start all over again. So I'm switching back off the screen share, and I'm going to let you talk about your experiences with each of the products you reviewed.
So let's just kick it off with the, I hate to say my least favorite, but let's start off with the Marantz, the 8805. I think just for the simple fact that I'm not the biggest fan of Odyssey, just without room correction at all. I've never been a real
Shane, I hate to
fan.
interrupt you, but your camera's a little out of focus.
All right, sorry. How's that?
Let's see. It looks better. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Autofocus, autofocus problems. But yeah, we'll start off with the Marantz 8805. Just right out of the box without any room correction. First, let's start with build quality. Probably the best feeling build Marantz I've ever used. I've had the 7702 prior to that, and that felt more like a receiver. The 8805 is more like their premium PM series. I think Gene's familiar with the PM series, right?
Mm-hmm.
With a very thick aluminum casing. It's all like sectioned off. The top screws off, or the corners screw off, so it's really robust hearing. But I think the weight is right up there as well. But sound quality wise, out of the gate, I mean, Marantz, for my ears, it's kind of light in the Atmos high channels. I wasn't hearing a lot of definition coming from the heights. I want to say the high end was a little bit more rolled than I'm used to, because I was coming from the Integra prior to that. So I was hearing a lot more detail on the Integra. And then when I switched over to the Marantz, which at $4,500, I was expecting to be blown away. Wasn't exactly blown away by it.
Was this with Odyssey engaged, or was this?
That was without Odyssey engaged.
Okay.
Yeah, without Odyssey engaged. But after running Odyssey, I got some more of that detail back. I did mess with the curves a little bit. But then I don't know what Odyssey does with bass response, but it just sucks the life out of, at least in my situation, my room. Bass always just disappears, and I've always got to bump up the subwoofer about 6 dB more, just to get to a satisfactory level.
How many subs you have running in your home theater room?
For testing, well, I've got 3. I've got a PD16, and then I have a PC4000 that I use for testing. And third one I shut off just to keep it, dual subs, because there's 2 outputs on it.
Right.
I ran Odyssey. Actually, I ran my PEQ for both subs first with Room EQ Wizard for both subs. Since the new SVS subs, they do have PEQ on them, which is an awesome feature. And then after that, I ran Odyssey, because that's what I was told to do. And again, bass just got sucked out. And then I had to go back, use Room EQ Wizard, see what kind of dips were going on, and then raise it about 6 dB just to get it back to life. Unless I know some people, I'm echoing for. I know a lot of people hate to use a dynamic volume because it kind of messes with your high end and your low end. It really puts a huge kind of like big peak around, I want to say like what, the 30 hertz range or so.
Yeah, it raises depending on the level of dynamic EQ you use, because there's different settings for it. I measured it, and it could give you a 10 to 15 dB boost, which is okay at low volume. But if you're dealing with program material that already is bass heavy and you turn the volume up, it's going to be way too bassy, which makes it sound like it's tapered off, because now you've shifted the tonal balance of your whole signal. Yeah,
so that's why I mean, it was definitely more robust when you turn that on, but I know it kind of throws everything else off. So that's the only thing I really hated about Odyssey. So you really have to kind of do some work with that to dial it in. I mean, other than that, everything was kind of flawless as far as HDMI switching, all the features that you get with it. It's the most feature-packed on this list. I mean, we would assume so for $4,500.
Yeah, you get it's the only product that has Aural 3D as opposed to the other 3 that don't. So
yeah, unfortunately, I couldn't try that because then I had to put another speaker in the center of my ceiling. So that was out of the question.
Yeah.
What else do we have here?
One thing I wanted to add to your discussion about you were having some problems with bass level. I did notice myself when I set up Odyssey, because Odyssey tells you to get your subs at like 75 dB when the initial setup. I think there's something going on with that calibration, and I brought this up to Denon. I told him, I go, I did the Odyssey setup, and it definitely knocked my subs down 4 or 5 dB lower than they should be. And I told them you had the same problem too, and they seem to acknowledge that there's something going on. I don't know if it's the receiver editor app that's kind of causing it, but I know that they're addressing some things in the receiver editor app. That's why I haven't done a dedicated video on using that app yet. In fact, I'm going to Sound United next week for a press event, and I'm going to be talking to some of their engineers just to see what's going on and what's new. But I will tell you this much, Shane. I don't recommend you running other EQ systems on your subs before running Odyssey. I think there could have been some type of problem where you're doing 2 different EQs and you're overcompensating for room modes in your room. I think that could be factoring into it as well. And I know a lot of manufacturers tell you, like Martin Logan, for example, they tell you to run ARC on each of your subs and then run ARC again on the preamp. I don't think that's a good idea, quite frankly. I don't know why these companies are telling you to do that. I think everything really needs to be looked at as a whole. I think you need to get all your subs set up properly, get all your phase and your time alignment and your levels good. And of course, use REW as a measurement tool to see what's going on, and then run your EQ, preferably globally, to all your subs. So I think there's a lot of problems, because anytime you're doing multi-sub with any of these room correction systems, none of them are perfect. And you're going to run into these problems, and that could really be throwing off your listening results. If you're not getting the bass right, the bass is 40% of the experience in home theater. So if you get the bass levels off, or you're getting suckouts because of the room correction, that can really skew your ear into terms of not liking how something sounded. So I just wanted to add that to you, for you, and then for everybody that's watching now, to understand that is important, that you get the bass levels right.
Right. That's good to know for the future. But I mean, that out of all the preamps processors, that was the only one that really gave me a problem with the low end. You know what I mean?
Right. So in other words, that was more finicky. In other words, you
Yeah.
did the same calibration procedure with the other systems, and you didn't run into these bass problems.
Right, right. So I was just kind of assuming it's Odyssey's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but speaking of Odyssey, the editor app, that's like, have you tried the editor app? It's like the worst app.
It's terrible. I use it on my phone, and it's really slow. And you have to anytime you do a change, you got to re-import it to the receiver. It just, I was starting to pull whatever hair I have left out, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just not going to use it. I'm a manual EQ kind of guy anyway. Yeah, I can understand the frustration. I heard it's better to use it on your iPad when you have a bigger screen. But again, they are addressing some stuff, because you realize the editor app wasn't really designed by Odyssey. It was like a Band-Aid fix for Odyssey, designed by Denon and Marantz, because Odyssey really Odyssey really hasn't done much in the last 5 or 10 years, if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's whoever's licensing their product now is making these changes, and Denon and Marantz are carrying the brand at this point.
But I know you can limit correction to like whatever you want, because I know you recommend stopping at like what, 300 hertz,
300 to 500 hertz usually. Yeah. Did that improve it when you did that? I mean, did it sound better when you limited the correction?
I liked it a little better without limiting, to like 300. I think I stopped it at 300 at one pass, then I let it correct the entire frequency in a second pass.
Right.
And I liked it better for detail in the surrounds and high channels, letting it do it all the way through, than stopping at 300 hertz. I wasn't a fan of that.
Gotcha.
Just for my ears.
Everybody has different experiences, of course. Yeah.
But that's my thoughts on that. I mean, they're supposed to be issuing the update to HDMI 2.1 whenever that hits. I'm assuming there's going to be some kind of fee for that if that ever takes off.
I think that's going to be a hardware change. I don't think that could be done through software. So they claim that they're supporting that, and the Denon AVRX8500. And as far as I know right now, those are the only two products that are claiming to be upgradable to HDMI 2.1 when it hits.
Yeah. What else we got? The next favorite is Anthem. Let's talk about Anthem there. That's an awesome room correction. I really like what it did to bass and just like overall sound quality, tonal. It really brought like a very, very cohesive. I like to say cohesive because sometimes you'll get those gaps in audio. I think I watch a lot of movies, so sometimes you'll get something that happens just off screen, and there's a little disconnect between maybe your front sound stage and like your high channels. This was really, it threw like a very good phantom image between both sound stages, between the high sound stage and the lower sound stage, which I really liked. Very nice cohesiveness there. Detail was killer. Probably not as good as the NAD, but I'm gonna say maybe like 10 or 20% off from what I got from the NAD after correction. I really like that. That app is awesome. It's not an app. It's actually done through your PC.
Yes.
So it's pretty robust PC program. Not the hardest to learn. It's very easy to learn, actually. I did enjoy that a lot. As you mentioned, the subwoofer outputs, they are parallel. They're not independent from each other. So that's why I ran the PQ separately before I started, since they were run as one. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I figured that would be the best bet.
Now, a quick note for you guys: if you don't have the ability to time align your subs, and you can't adjust for path differences between your subs and your listening position, if you use symmetry in your placement, if you put one sub in each corner in the front of the room, or one sub on each sidewall, with respect to the listening area, the path differences are the same. So you don't have to have separate delay settings. The separate delay settings are really advantageous when your subs are in different locations of the room and different path differences to the listening area. So in your case, if your subs are equidistant from where you're sitting, you probably wouldn't have needed to change the delays of your subs, and maybe that's why you did okay with that. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is Anthem now has the newer update to their ARC the Genesis. And from what I'm reading so far, people are really liking that, the updates to that. It's, you know, more powerful, easier to use. I'm going to be taking a look at that probably in a couple of months, because I'm redoing some of the stuff in my theater room, and I have the Anthem STR separates, and I'll be recalibrating, and I'll be checking out Genesis, and at that point I'll do a YouTube video on it, let you guys know the results. But I love ARC room correction. I limited mine to 500 hertz. It defaults to 5 kilohertz. I think they could go full bandwidth now, and I think your AVM60 was full bandwidth. Did you run it? Did you run it full bandwidth or up to 5K?
I ran it full.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I tried it. I tried it up to 5,000 hertz, and then I didn't like what it was doing to the mid range, because this was just a 2-channel setup, and I find room correction. The differences with room correction on or off are much more easy to hear when you're only listening to 2 speakers as opposed to a surround system. It's just your brain focuses on the sound of those 2 speakers. And the best results I got with ARC was when I ran it, I stopped it at 500 hertz, and then it puts a shelving, it puts a high pass shelving filter below 20 hertz. I kind of lifted that because my speakers have a ton of bass output capability. I've got 3 10-inch drivers in my reference speakers. So I reshaped that, and I actually extended the output and the extension of my speakers in 2-channel. And let me tell you, man, with Anthem ARC on, it was just icing on the cake. It was like getting a really good cake and then putting some nice icing on it. And I was very impressed, because I've heard people rave about ARC before. I've listened to all the different room corrections like Odyssey and YPOW, and YPOW is pretty useless in my opinion. I hate to say this to you guys, Yamaha, but come on. It's time to move up the scale, because YPOW really doesn't do anything beneficial much at all for bass. But the ARC system is definitely as good or better than Odyssey ever was. And to me, I got ARC good within the first or second try. Like Odyssey, I have to finagle to sound good. With Anthem ARC, I just had to make some minor changes to it, and I was like in sonic nirvana. So it sounds like you've had similar experiences.
Yeah, because in my space, I've got like 6 seats, and I like to bounce around, you know, just to get comfortable. And certain seats feel different than other ones. And I've got a lot of bumpy bass, especially when you're moving around the room. And what is it? ARC didn't make it perfect sounding, but it definitely smoothed out response throughout all six seating locations. So I was surprised by that, because I was expecting something more on the lines of Odyssey. So usually, because I came from the Integra, which is is it MCAC? MCAC?
If it's the old Integra, that should be Odyssey. Unless you're doing
their new one is not Odyssey anymore.
Oh yeah, I
yeah.
forgot what they call it, but that's definitely not. I don't think it's as sophisticated as Odyssey.
Yeah, no, it's worse than Odyssey, and I was expecting bass like that, because Odyssey and them kind of almost sound the same to me. And then ARC was just like another revelation. I was like, damn, this is what room correction is.
Now, guys, I want to interrupt this program for an emergency announcement. If you check the Audioholics website yesterday, I believe we announced it, or 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Sound United purchased all assets of Onkyo, Integra, and Pioneer. So Sound United now owns Marantz, Denon, Definitive Technology, Polk, Class A, Onkyo, Integra, Pioneer. They've got 8 companies. They're like the super company now for audio. And I think that this is going to have some radical changes on some of their products. I think you're probably going to wind up seeing Odyssey put back into the Onkyo and Integra line, because their room correction, I really feel like what happened with Onkyo and what happened with Integra over the last couple of years is they had a lot of problems with their HDMI boards.
Yeah.
And they were losing out big time with that. And they had to figure out a way to fix that, which I think when they purchased Pioneer, that really changed things for them, because their HDMI switching on Pioneer stuff is pretty solid. So they resolved that, but then I think Onkyo was trying to win back market share, and they wanted to have the cheapest receivers with the maximum power and performance for the dollar. And the only way to do that was to not pay the licensing fee to Odyssey anymore. So they came out with their own system, which was very sophomoric, I hate to say.
Yeah.
But most people, you know, they didn't notice because a lot of people will turn on the room correction and it sounds different. So different has to be better. So Onkyo was hitting price points, you know, $600 price points that, you know, Denon, Yamaha, they didn't give you quite as many features, as quite as much power. So I think it was a good move on their part. But now that Sound United is eventually going to own these companies, I wouldn't be surprised if you see them slide Odyssey back into those products.
Do you think we're going to get a unified menu system?
I hope not. I mean, I think people like different brands for different reasons. So I know there's a unified menu system with Marantz and Denon. That makes sense because they share a platform. So now I think there'll be still a unified menu system with Onkyo, Integra, and Pioneer since they share a platform. But honestly, I think to get them all to be the same would make things way too vanilla. So hopefully they take assets of each company and they kind of make their other products' strengths better, but keeping the unique stuff that's still there. Like the thing that's unique about the Onkyo, or I should say the Pioneer line, is they have their own Class D module. And I think it's an improvement over what the ICE module was in the original. When Pioneer went digital with their Class D amplifiers, they used the ICE module, and there was a lot of limitations to that. You know, they had a hard time driving 4-ohm loads, and we tested the SC07 years ago, and we saw the thing just limit power to like 30 watts when it was driving 4-ohm loads at above 5 kilohertz. That's just unacceptable, especially if you're running speakers that are low impedance. You know, some of the budget speakers like the old Infinity Primus, in order to get the sensitivity up, they put a 4-ohm tweeter on an 8-ohm speaker, and now at high frequencies, that impedance curve goes down to 4 ohms. You could be clipping the protection circuits in the receiver if it can't handle 4 ohms. So I'm glad they moved away from that ICE module, and they are using now their D3. And the advantage of having a good Class D and a receiver with tons of channels in it is you're pumping that much channel density into a small chassis. You need to cut down on the heat. So I think they could be doing some unique stuff if they want to go above 11 channels or 13 channels with that Class D module. And I don't want to see Onkyo or Pioneer abandon it and go back to what everyone else is using and then have no differentiation of products. So I think this is a good opportunity for Sound United to kind of make distinctions in their product line, but also fix any gremlins or bugs in any of the products that have weaknesses.
Yeah, I've had actually 2 Onkyo units fail on me. And the Integra DRC R1 that I had before I got rid of it, the one of the HDMI was starting to get a little flaky on me as well, and that was from 2016.
Yeah, I know. I've heard a lot of stories. So I've got a DTRX 4.1, which is the new Integra receiver, and I've been using it in my bedroom system now for 3 months, and I'm using the HD base T. So I'm converting HDMI to HD base T through Ethernet all the way because it's upstairs and my bedroom system is downstairs, and I'm running it over Cat 6, and I'm doing 1080p, and it's working great. I haven't had any HDMI issues or any video switching issues. So far I've been impressed. I'm glad to see that this product is reliable, and hopefully now that Sound United has acquired Integra and Pioneer, that it at least keeps them going the way they were and it doesn't make anything worse.
So they're going to have the monopoly over at your local Best Buy.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I kind of feel bad for Yamaha because Yamaha's kind of doing their own thing. I mean, Yamaha's a huge company. Come on, they make pianos and motorcycles and jet skis and stuff. But the audio division, they have to be feeling this now that Sound United is it's like the Federation of Planets, man. It's gobbling up worlds and taking over the whole Alpha Quadrant. So it's going to be interesting in the next year or two to see where this goes.
You think they're still going to be THX certifying their receivers, Onkyo, Integra?
I mean, that was a big selling point with the THX Select 2. I don't think that's going to go away. I think, and that might be another way they could differentiate from the other products. I don't think they're going to do away with THX.
I've always been a fan of THX. I know it gets a lot of hate, but
Well, there's pros and cons. I mean, THX has done some good stuff. The bass management stuff that they came out with the 80 hertz crossovers and the slopes and the filters. I mean, some of that stuff is really good stuff. So, but then when they try to certify a door, I mean, it gets a little ridiculous. So, I mean, I kind of have mixed feelings about THX. Oh, holy cow, man. I just want to interrupt. Can Do just gave us a $25 super chat. That's crazy, man. I really appreciate that. So let me just answer this question for you. Outside of auto room correction, what dB do you set for manual calibration? I guess you're talking about doing your channel trims and getting that all set up. I reference 75 dB, which is pretty standard. And then I get all my channels referenced to 75 dB at the listening position. And then the subwoofer channel, you tend to be able to go up a little higher if you flatten your response. If you bass manage and you get your multi-sub going and you get rid of the room peaks, you'd be surprised. You can go sometimes 4 or 5 dB above the other channels and it won't sound boomy. And if you like that extra impact, there's definitely a benefit to that. So 75 dB should be good. Some people go to 85, but that's a pretty loud reference level. If you're listening at 85, you're going to have over 105 dB peaks. That's pretty loud. So, you know, depending on your listening habits, I guess. But if you calibrate at 75 or you calibrate at 85, the linearity should be very similar. So why, you know, I would say calibrate at 75, and then if you want to go up louder from there, you know, go ahead and do it. Your channels should still all be in balance.
Yeah, I think 85 was wasn't that like a reference for like theaters?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculously loud.
It is, especially in a small room, you know, and most people are only a few feet away from a surround channel. So that,
I mean, I feel even 75 is loud for me.
Oh, it is. You're right. And you got to realize too, 75 is moderately loud with only 2 speakers playing, but now you got 7 or 11 speakers playing, and you get the sum of the square root of the squares because they're uncorrelated audio signals. That 75 can go, you know, over 100 dB, just steady state when all those speakers are going. So yeah, it's pretty loud. So I'm sorry, we got divergent here. You were talking about the Anthem.
Oh yeah. The Anthem.
So you love their room correction, but there was what was lacking in the AVM60 to you?
See, I'm the kind of person that only cares like what it sounds like, and just as long as HDMI works on it, that's all I really worry about. That's why I kind of like the AVM60 and the NAD, because they're kind of bare bones. They're not chock full of, you know, Spotify apps and Tidal apps and all sort of crap. Right. Other than that, man, I mean, it's got multi-room, it's got Play-Fi on it. I personally don't know anybody that uses Play-Fi, but it's got that. Just from a pure like audio standpoint, I was happy with it. I didn't have any issues with HDMI or switching or anything like that.
Well, that's a good thing. I mean, and it's been out for a while, so
it has been out for a while. I contemplated keeping it, but knowing that it's been out for like 3 years now, maybe going on 4 right now, I would assume something is coming around the corner. They got to have something.
I would imagine so too. Yeah. And I know they had growing pains when that product first came out. I know there were some HDMI issues and just people complaining about stuff. But I know it's been out for a while now, so it's pretty bulletproof design. I'd like to see Anthem kind of offer something like they had back in the day with the D2. That thing was a beast. You know, the build quality on that thing and the DAC section. The DAC section on the D2 was kind of like what they're doing now with the Anthem STR, which, by the way, is a beautiful 2-channel preamp. I can't say enough good things about that. I did a full review on it. I did measurements. In fact, I had one of our guys that's going to be handling vinyl reviews for us. He brought over his separate phono preamp, really expensive phono preamp. I don't even remember the brand. And he's like, oh, you got to hear my phono preamp. It's going to really improve the sound of your vinyl, right? I'm like, all right, well, bring it. But I'll be honest with you, the Anthem Analog section is really good. I measured it. I've got the RIAA curves, and I calibrated it through my Audio Precision, and this thing had very low distortion, very good signal to noise ratio. I mean, I just couldn't believe what I was seeing out of, they're taking phono so seriously in this thing. Well, he hooked up his phono preamp and we level matched and we switched back and forth because we both have the Marantz TT15S1 turntables and we had everything level matched and we're instantly switching. And he couldn't hear a difference and I couldn't hear a difference. That's how good the preamp is on the Anthem. Now, if you used a phono preamp on the Yamaha 5100, it's not to the level of what was in that Anthem. So a lot of these pre-pros or receivers that have a phono preamp, they have it there more as a novelty or just for you to hook up your stuff, but it's not necessarily giving you state-of-the-art performance for that media.
Unfortunately, I'm not a vinyl guy.
I would turn you into vinyl, man. If you came here and I played you Dire Straits' Brothers for Arms, it's a 2-disc set because it's less compressed. So you actually, it's a pain in the ass. There's only 2 songs per side. Right. But man, let me tell you something. I could not believe how good it sounded. If you have a properly set up turntable, it's fun. I mean, it actually forces you to listen to the whole record, whereas if you just had it all streaming, you just skip around. You know, it just makes you appreciate the music more. And it may not be as accurate as digital, but you know, I do like I like the way bass sounds on vinyl, because it could be something with the RAAA curve and how they EQ the bass. But I just like 70s and 80s jazz albums. To me, they just sound so good on vinyl, man. I can just sit back and just really enjoy that. And I can't convey to you until you actually experience it. And my wife loves it as well. So it's just, if you have time and you do listen to a lot of 2-channel, I would just get a turntable, get one of those Fluence turntables. They're like $300, man, and just play around with it and get a couple of records. Go to like a used record store, get some records, and just give it a try. Because I used to make fun of the vinyl stuff years ago until I actually got a setup, and I was like, man, I can't be making fun of this anymore because I like it too much.
You can't even buy CDs anymore at your local Best Buy, like Target anymore.
Yeah, you could buy vinyl records though. You can go to Target now, and they're like $30 a pop. And Brookstone and all the bookstores have it. It's crazy.
Good for the record companies because you're not pirating records.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the Anthem one, you love the room correction on that. You didn't really find anything missing on it.
Oh, I don't have any issues with that at all.
Yeah, it's a good product. The only thing I wish they would come out with the ability to have independent subwoofer outputs. I really like that. There's no reason not to have that, especially on a product of this price point. So hopefully we'll see a refresh of this product. Maybe there'll be an AVM80 or something in the future. Maybe they'll do that. And I don't know. I mean, they definitely have the engineering resources to do it, and it's time for them to do an upgrade. So I'm sure we'll see something, you know, maybe at CES or something.
Yeah, I feel like out of the 3 that I checked out, I feel that's the best bang for your buck.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, it's half the price of the NAD.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the NAD. That's the
NAD,
one.
Man. My favorite. This is my favorite.
Maybe I'm surprised to hear you say that, to be honest with you. I'm surprised to hear you say that that's your favorite processor.
Why do you say that?
Because I just look at it, and to me, it's almost like they took an existing design and they put a Band-Aid on it to fix it, to upgrade it to Atmos. And it's like they didn't think this out for Atmos. You know, like for example, the surround channels don't have regular XLRs; they have mini XLRs. It's like they had to add a card because this wasn't an Atmos product up until 6 months ago. This was a Dolby True HD DTS HD product. So
I mean, there's space back there to put full size ones in. So I was a little surprised it wasn't full size.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, when I was talking to the engineers there. So this came out in 2014. Even the badges on the front, where it's like, True HD, DTS, HD, it still had the older chassis on it without the new silk screening with Atmos DTSX. So, I mean, it's just the shell. Like, the chassis is just the shell. And from the explanation that I was given, all the cards, that's where your sound card is, your video card is, your GPU relies on each card. So like their 777 receiver, I think it is, that's been going on like 10 years now for that chassis.
Yep.
They've just been continuously just upgrading that. So just as long as they have a nice foundation, just a nice shell, they're just going to continuously just put new modules in it, which I think is awesome because, you're not shelling out new money every couple of years for a new preamp processor.
Yeah, like I was saying before, it gets kind of crazy when you go out and you spend $4 or $5 grand on a processor, and 3 years down the road, HDMI standards change, and now it's a boat anchor.
Yeah,
and we've been promised for years. I mean, Integra promised us. Denon was my biggest heartbreak. Denon broke my heart in audio because I had their AVP-A1 HDCI. It was a $7,500, 60-pound, 10-channel processor. They will never make a product to that build quality ever again. Every circuit in that thing was fully differential. It's not like the balanced outputs you get now on these processors that just use a phase splitter. I'm talking about they had a separate amplifier for the positive and a separate amplifier for the negative throughout the entire design, including the DACs. Everything was differential from input to output. This is what you get in commercial grade audio, like in a recording studio. So the signal to noise ratio on a product like that is basically within the limits of my test gear. When I measured the AVP, that thing was within the noise limits of my test gear, and I've never measured a product that quiet ever since. But unfortunately, it was a boat anchor. You know, Dolby True HD, DTS HD. In fact, I remember doing a video like 4 or 5 years ago about our reference system. I'm like, yeah, guys, just get the best product you can processor now because nothing's going to change, right? Well, that's 6 months later, Dolby announced Atmos that's coming to home theater, and then everything changed because then we had immersive surround. We had HDMI 2.0 coming. We had UHD coming because, you know, 1080p wasn't enough. So we had to go to 4K. And of course, my AVP was a boat anchor. So I had to sell it while I could. And I sold that $7,500 processor for like $3,000. And now you could probably buy it, whatever is left of them on eBay for $2,000 or less because nobody wants a product that's obsolete.
Mm-hmm. That's the good thing about the NAD, man. They're just going to hopefully just keep upgrading new modules. And the build quality in that, the best out of the bunch here.
Yeah, well, you have a nice chassis on that.
Yeah.
It's not the standard thin steel chassis that you get with the other products. I'd be curious to open it up and see what's inside because even though it looks great and it's tiny, it only weighs 20 pounds. So I'm kind of curious. There's just a lot.
I got the box. I was like, holy shit! I was like, this is a beast. I took it out of the box. I was like, what? I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? It was super light. Yeah, very surprised.
Well, I mean, the one advantage that the NAD has, the price is not the advantage. The price is kind of ridiculous. At $6,000 is insane. What that tells me is they're not selling a lot of these. This is a high margin, low volume product, but it has a market. I mean, people love the NAD brand. They love the heritage of the company, and they love the honesty of the brand because if you look at their receivers and you look at their amplifiers, when they rate the power, they're very conservatively rated. They're not doing this crap that you're seeing in the Atmos receivers now from the Japanese companies that are rating 1-channel driven, 10% distortion, 6 ohms at 1 kilohertz. NAD is actually giving you full power bandwidth with all channels driven. So while you have a Denon that looks like it's 150 watts a channel and NAD is telling you they're 110 or 90 watts a channel, the reality of the situation is both receivers are about the same power levels. It's just NAD is being a lot more honest in the disclosure of their power. And I keep telling the Japanese companies, stop fudging the numbers because people are not that stupid. I mean, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but not all the people all the time. So I've become more of a stickler on this now ever since Atmos came out because everybody's fudging more. It's like these receivers are getting more powerful, but they're packing more channels in them and they're weighing less. Yep. They're using the same size power supplies or smaller that they use in a 7-channel model, now in an 11-channel model. And they're putting all this licensing by adding all these, you know, the latest in HDMI and Atmos and DTS-X. Of course, they're going to shrink the power supply, but why are they inflating the power numbers? It drives me crazy. It's another pet peeve that I often vent about on this channel. So I'm sorry to be always repetitive, but I just want people to really understand that specmanship really, it's not universally standardized.
Yeah, you need to hop on another video. I don't think you've done one in a while. You know?
Oh, yeah. You're right. I should do an amplifier video soon. So the NAD, the one big advantage it has is it has DRAC.
Yeah, and it's DRAC live on it.
That is probably one of the most advanced, most flexible room correction systems because you could shape your room curve to it. Yep. Like Odyssey, for example, has a house curve. Obviously, now you could bandwidth limit that, but there's not a whole lot you could do to change the house curve, whereas with DRAC, you could actually reshape that. That's a huge advantage, and I'm curious to see what your results were when you used DRAC. Tell us exactly how the calibration went and how it sounded.
It's got everything. It's got phase room correction, impulse response correction, sound quality this thing puts out very three-dimensional. Just my walls kind of just vanished. Like I've never heard my speaker sound as good before. And even though it does have parallel subwoofer outputs, because of Dirac doesn't do independent correction, there is a new module that's supposed to be coming out that will enable correction of both subs independently.
Oh, okay.
Right, because the actual sub outputs, they are independent, but because of the room correction, it's parallel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I had asked about the new module because I think they announced it. Dirac announced it a couple months, maybe like 2 months ago.
Yeah.
And the engineer wouldn't say yes or no, but he said that yes, it will. The new update will correct for 2 separate subwoofers.
Oh, do you still have that product, or did you send that back?
Yeah, no, I sent it back already. Yeah.
We might have to get another sample of it again when that module comes out. Or actually, you know what we might do? I'll kind of announce this, and I'm going to put Matthew Pose on the hook now. Matthew does some of the live broadcasts with us. Mm-hmm. I'm having him work on a face-off of all the different room correction systems, and he's going to do them for a 2-channel with 2 speakers and a sub. And he's going to compare Odyssey, Dirac, ARC, YPOW, you name it. We're going to have him do it and measure before and after to show what goes on. Because people are always asking us, well, what's the best sounding room correction? What's the pros and cons of each? It's, we could talk about it till we're blue in the face, but it's nice to see the measurements. It's nice to see the calibration results. And quite frankly, when you're comparing room correction systems, if you really want to hear the differences, you should do it with just 2 channels going as opposed to the whole theater, because once you have all speakers going from all around you, it gives you a masking effect because it actually overloads your head. So you can't hear the subtle differences when you have all those speakers going. So what will make or break the system is just kind of focusing on the 2 speakers integrated with the sub. Because let's face it, getting that sub integration between the sub and the mains is key. Mm-hmm. And it just boggles my mind why nobody in the industry has made a simple solution for that plug and play that really works. The only one I know of that is really got it buttoned down is Harman's sound field management, but that's only available on JBL Synthesis, and it's not available on any of their consumer products. And Harman doesn't even make receivers anymore, and they don't license that technology, so it's kind of heartbreaking that they don't. But I'm curious to see what this Dirac is doing with their new module. And I know a lot of people swear by Dirac, and it sounds like that's what really made you like the NAD, or people want to call it NAD. Go NAD, whatever you want to call it. I call it NAD, but whatever. So yeah, did you actually do measurements using REW in your system before and after, or did you just go by listening?
I just went by listening. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we definitely want to do some real measurements and see what's going on there. And I'm looking forward to checking that out. So what were the things you didn't like about the NAD M17 V2?
Well, there is no overlay, video overlay. So
OSD.
If you want to check your volume, yeah, like volume, your graphical user interface. If you want to see your volume or what sound format it's in, you have to go up and look at the device itself. Like for me, it's in another room, so I'd have to get up, make sure it's actually on Atmos or whatever I'm up mixing. I'd have to go in the other room and just make sure it's on the correct sound format. So that was kind of a pain in the butt.
That would really bother me, because there's a lot of high-end processors out now, like the Storm Audio one, and I think what's the other one? Trinov, and then there's like 2 or 3 other processors that do above 13 channels with incredibly good bass management, and they all have Dirac, or they have the Trinov room correction system. But why I haven't really transitioned into using one of those systems is they don't have an on-screen display. So you got to set it all up from your PC or from a tablet. And I just like having an OSD overlay. I really like to see, I always hit the info button to see how many channels are going or what the bit rate is. And it kills me when they don't have an OSD. And then also, to me, it says they don't have the horsepower to do it. The Trinov one, for example, is just a PC with a deck tied to it. And there's pros and cons to that. The pros of the open architectures, you could always make changes, but then there's some operational things that are missing out of these products. So, and it's buggy. So I don't know. I'm a traditional kind of guy. I like for home theater, I like to have an OSD overlay. So that would be a deal breaker for me. I wouldn't want to have that product in my system just because of that, personally.
I had to overlook that just because it sounded so good. So I had to deal. I just dealt with it. That's what sucked on it. Multi-room video out, I wouldn't do that.
But you also having some HDMI hiccups as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So the NAD, I guess with the Apple TV at least, since it has like automatic frame rate or matching content, so frame rate and refresh rate would automatically switch on Apple TVs depending on source. If you have that set up to change automatically, the NAD wouldn't, it couldn't recognize it, so it would just lock up. It would just freeze. You get nothing, and then you'd have to turn off the unit, turn off the Apple TV, and then just restart everything all over again. So that was the biggest thing. And if I was using the PC to it, which I rip all my Blu-rays on my PC, and it just wouldn't work with the PC, just because PC's same thing, refresh rate, color space, it just wouldn't handshake correctly with the NAD.
That's got to be pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, there's pros and cons to each of these products that you went over, obviously. And if you're just looking for bare bones performance and you're not doing all these advanced streaming and you really want good room correction and you don't mind spending $6,000, then the NAD is a good choice. But if you want to have all your bells and whistles and you want to have, things work 100% of the time with everything you're streaming, then, the Marantz or the Anthem are probably better choices in that situation, especially the Anthem, because the Anthem has the ARC Genesis room correction, which probably is the closest thing you're going to get to D-Rack, and the ARC is probably a lot easier to use, to be honest with you. Did you find ARC was easier to set up out of the gate than D-Rack?
They were basically the same as far as like setup and running everything. I know you can only do like you can get away doing like 9 measurements for the direct, but I think I ran like all 17, which took me almost an hour. So, and if you don't have a solid internet connection, since you're running your mic into the PC, then it wirelessly over your internet goes over to the unit after it's done measuring. So it sends the information back over the internet to the actual NAD itself. So if it stops halfway in transmitting or stops halfway during your measurements, you got to start all over again.
Well, one thing you got to be, and I tell this to people all the time, these room correction systems, when they give you like, Odyssey used to give you 32 points of calibration. And I'm like, it gets ludicrous to a point, because in reality, in order for these room correction systems to work as best as they can, you're going to have to pick a money seat and then correct from around that area. And years ago, Odyssey used to say, oh, just put the mic around the room and it'll do its thing. And now they've backed that off and they said, keep it within a 2 or 3 foot radius from your money seat. And I've seen dealers, like ARC Anthem dealers, basically give the same bad advice about just putting the mic anywhere in the room, let it feel the room, let it measure the room. And it just doesn't work that way. The way the math works and trying to find the best fit for room correction is it really needs a pretty narrow area to correct, if it's gonna, especially if it's going to do full bandwidth correction. If it's just doing bass and you already have multi-sub properly positioned, then your correction area widens, obviously, because you're controlling the room modes. You can't control these modes at very high frequencies, so it's not very predictable to do room correction across a wide listening area. So 32 points or 17 points like you did, honestly, Shane, you probably could have gotten away with 6, maybe 8 points max, and you would have been fine, and you would have saved yourself a lot of time and hassle for having to worry about it, and that you're losing your internet connection and rebooting. So I wanted to give you guys a tip out there. You don't have to use the maximum number of correction points. Just because they give you something doesn't mean you have to use it.
Let's speak about that microphone they give you. One of the worst mics, one of the cheapest mics. It's like this really cheap little puck. It almost looks like an Odyssey mic, the little round pucks you get.
Oh yeah, those are bad.
Yeah, it's like that.
The Yamaha.
And the way next, I didn't use the mic because it was kind of rudimentary. Like the mic would go into this little USB adapter, into this other 3.5 to 2.5 adapter, and then into the back of the NAD. It was really, really just like a mess, just a confounded mess.
So what mic did you use then?
I used the U mic one.
Oh, okay. Did you have to put a calibration file into the program for that?
Yeah. So you download the software from NAD, the Dirac software, and then it works with a bunch of different mics, just as long as you have the calibration file. And then from there, you just run the measurements.
Well, you did the right thing, because your UMM mic is probably a much better mic. Especially if it's a long mic, it's going to be much more accurate for low frequency correction than that little hockey puck.
And not only was the measurement mic kind of crappy, the way that they implemented the Blue OS, so they give you like this little Wi-Fi dongle, which plugs into a Wi-Fi to other separate dongle, which then plugs into the back of the receiver. So it's just, I could see how that was just like, in 2014, I guess it didn't exist. So this was like just a workaround for it.
Band-Aid fix.
Yeah. So that was that was a bummer. That looked like it looked shitty.
Yeah, I can understand that. Like I said, it looked like NAD is just trying to update an older platform, which I commend them for doing that, and they're supporting the product. But there's obviously pros and cons to doing that type of approach. You know, you don't start with a fresh platform and have all the fancy connectors and everything all laid out in advance. You're kind of putting Band-Aids on it to make it relevant again, basically.
So, I mean, aside from the superior sound quality, everything else just failed for me. I really contemplated purchasing this because it just sounds so good, but I couldn't live with HDMI not working. No user interface. It was just kind of a mess in that regards. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a deal breaker for me as well, man. So we're down to the last processor, and that's the one you don't have any experience with, but I have a ton of experience with. Is the Yamaha. And looking at this list, I'm just going to put up my screen share again on this. I honestly think if you don't need more than 11 channels and you don't really care about room correction, and you're a kind of guy that can manually go in and edit stuff, the Yamaha is the best value out of all these processors. It's built like a tank. It has you know, all the latest features. It has your MusicCast management system. The HDMI is solid on it. The biggest complaint I had about the CX-A5100 was this HDMI switching was slow. And I've heard, I haven't tested it yet, but I've heard that it's been greatly improved with the 5200. If anybody has an RXA 3080, which has the same kind of processing engine as the 5200, you know, if you can comment here and just tell us what you think about the HDMI switching speed on that, because if it's fast, then I know it's going to be fast on the 5200. That's something I will be testing on this model. But I just love the fact that I've got the interface over the web, and I don't even remember if I have the IP address on it or not to show you guys. If I remember the IP address for mine, but the fact that you can go in and EQ manually, no, I don't remember the IP address. Unfortunately, this is not something I was anticipating on doing, but you can go in and manually EQ this thing for bass if you don't use the YPAL on it. And I just had a great result with that because it has a manual PEQ. The Marantz has a manual EQ, but it's GEQ. So it's fixed bands. It's kind of useless. And I really wish they would step away from that. The having a GEQ on a product like this is just a waste of time. And they have the processing power to switch that to a parametric EQ. Parametric EQ allows you to adjust the frequency and the Q, the amount of correction you're going to do, the width of the correction you're going to do. The Yamaha allows you to go, it used to be Yamaha would stop at 31.5 hertz, and I kept railing them, why are you guys doing that? Go down below 20 hertz, because most of your correction you're going to do for bass is you got low frequency modal problems. You want to do your corrections in probably the 20 to 40 hertz range. And they finally, with the 5100, they finally enabled you to do that. And if you spend the time and you're going to manually calibrate your setup, then the 5100 or the 5200 now is a great choice. The other advantage the 5200 has over the 5100, other than maybe faster HDMI switching, is now they have their new AI system, which is their artificial intelligence. It's kind of a fancy dynamic compressor as far as I can tell. they claim to reference a movie database. Then they look at the program material that's coming through your system, and they adjust the levels accordingly to optimize, you know, the center channel dialogue, intelligibility, that kind of stuff. I take that with a mixed grain of salt because, you know, Yamaha's been doing their DSP processing for decades, and they have like 50 different DSP modes. They claim they could turn your room into, you know, the Village Vanguard or the Roxy Theater. But to me, it just sounds like you're listening in a German bathtub. You know, it's just a lot of echo. And if you don't scale down that DSP, it's just very gimmicky. It used to be years ago when you would turn their DSP modes on, it would mess the bass up in your subwoofer because it would send a DSP through the sub as well, and it would just not sound cohesive. They've gotten better with that, and especially if you run front height effects and you do like the DSP goes to the front heights but not the main channel, so you still preserve your stereo imaging without throwing any gimmicky DSP in there. So if you do like to play around with that stuff, that's Yamaha is the best at DSP when it comes to enhanced modes. I personally just like the regular modes. The other thing I like about the 5100, which I hope is carried over to the 5200, is once Yamaha gives you a feature, they never take it away. Whereas what's going on now is with the latest products, with their up mixers, like Dolby, for example. Dolby dropped ProLogic 2 music and cinema mode. Now they just have the Dolby surround up mixer. DTS dropped their original up mixer, and now they have the DTS X up mixer, and that is a terrible up mixer in my opinion, especially for 2-channel music. It just dumps everything to the center channel, and there's no way to restore that and to just bring that music back to the front channels. Well, on my Yamaha, if I want to use the DTS up mixer, I could go to the older up mixer and not use the DTS X one. I could use the Neo one, and the Neo up mixer was much better than the DTS X up mixer for 2-channel music. So I like the fact that Yamaha has all those modes still available. You don't find that in the Marantz or any of the other products. So if you like to play around with those different surround options, Yamaha definitely has you covered on that. Again, I love the build quality of the unit, and I've had excellent results with Yamaha. Their stuff never breaks on me. I mean, I don't really hear of any reliability issues with Yamaha products. And I can't speak for NAD. I don't really have a whole lot of experience with that, but I can tell you that from what I've read on the forums and stuff, Denon, Marantz, Yamaha typically have some of the best reliability on the market. So that's something to consider as well if you plan on keeping something for over a decade or however long you plan on keeping it. So I do think the Yamaha has a lot of advantages. But if you do want to go beyond 11 channels, the only solution here in this price range is that Marantz AV8805.
Yeah. I think the RMC one, that's about the same price, I think. Correct?
Yeah, but like I said, man, that thing, if you look at their forums and you look at AVS forum, there's a lot of bugs going on right now, and I can't be recommending that to people. And in fact, especially without a professional review. I mean, on paper, that sounds like a great product, especially because it has an OSD overlay. It's the only 16-channel processor on the market that has an OSD overlay. All the other ones are PC-based or tablet-based. So I commend Emotiva for trying, but it just doesn't sound like it's fully fleshed out yet.
Surprising, because I think they're releasing 2 more, smaller versions of the RMC1.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying that for now, but you know how long, their product cycles or their product release dates never match reality. So I guess we'll figure that out in the coming months or so. But these are all great products, guys. They all have pros and cons, and I'd like to be doing more reviews of these processors, but it's pretty cumbersome. And I'm glad that you're able to just swap stuff out of your rack quickly, Shane, and I'm going to probably throw some more processors at you.
Not quickly.
Well, you're organized. You're more organized than me because it's a project for me. Because I've got a Control4 home automation system integrated in all my theater rooms. So if I pull anything out, then I kind of lose that functionality, and it's just I'd rather not.
Oh, just real quick. I believe on the NAD you can still upmix DTS X material, no, DTS X, DTS material with Dolby Surround upmixer and vice versa.
Yeah, you could still do cross upmixing on these products because they weren't made in 2019 per the Dolby Atmos, per the Dolby mandate. Dolby's kind of tying everybody's hands this year, and they don't want you cross upmixing. So you could thank Dolby for that, because they're the ones that came up with that mandate. And we have an article and a video on that where we talk about it. I have not seen any products yet with that restriction enabled. I'll check the Yamaha 5200, but I don't think it is enabled on that, since it's.
I don't think you can do it with the Marantz, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think you can do it.
Marantz?
Yep.
You know what? I'll be there next week, so I'll ask them, and I'll report back. So I wanted to kind of look. There's a lot of feedback here, a lot of wow, a lot of people asking stuff. Maybe I could just quickly look at some of this stuff, and then we'll call it a day. Some processors have fully balanced connections but are not fully balanced. Important. Why or why not? Is there a trick to finding this in specs? Yeah, and I spoke about that. A lot of these balanced, quote, balanced processors or balanced amplifiers, it's just a phase splitter. So it's really unbalanced converted to balanced. It's still better than completely unbalanced, but it's nothing like having dual differential circuits on input to output. Theoretically, that's the best way to do it. Measurement-wise, you'll get better noise immunity, you'll get better distortion specs, you get a lower noise floor. But I mean, you still get great performance out of this stuff. I mean, we're talking about splitting hairs to some degree. So, but I do like having fully balanced designs, because I come from the telecom industry where everything I design circuit-wise has always been fully balanced and differential. And there's no way to really tell if a company is doing fully balanced unless it says it, I guess, or you call them. The Denon AVP, for example, was fully differential design. I know Emotiva claims the RMC1 is fully differential from input to output. I have no reason to doubt their claim on that. I know Dan Loftman's design goals with stuff, so I'm sure he's putting his best foot forward circuit-wise in that product. And
I believe the two smaller ones, the cheapest one is supposed to not be fully differential. And then the second in the line, I think the front 3 channels are going to be fully differential.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I read that too. So yeah, that's a good point. Let's see what else. Would you consider the Denon AVR8500 as a good preamp, even though it's a great receiver looking to expand? Yes, the Denon AVR8500 would be a great preamp, because especially it has a preamp only mode, which doesn't shut off the amplifiers, but it disconnects the amplifier path. And why that's important is I've found, like I have a Marantz SR8012, great receiver. I love the receiver. But when I was bench testing it and I was testing the preamp, as soon as when I got past 1.2 volts with a sine sweep, it would shut the receiver off. I was like, what the hell's going on? It's not clipping. This thing would put out 4 volts RMS. But what was happening was when I was doing a sweep tone, it thought the amplifier was being fed a signal. And the amplifier reaches full power at 1.2 volts. So it thought the amplifiers were clipping. So there's a distinct possibility that if you're using it as a preamp and you don't have the ability to disconnect between the preamp and the power amp like you can on the AVRX8500, it's very possible that receiver could shut off with loud program material when you're using the pre-outs, even though the amplifier channels are unloaded or open circuited. So the 8500 is very cool that it has that feature, the preamp only mode, and it has an eco mode, which I would use the eco auto mode, which lowers the bias on all the idling amplifiers, because it's kind of like almost like a class G topology. It lowers the rail voltage, so you're not burning as much quiescent current in all those 13 channels. So that thing runs really cool, really efficient. It's a great product. And if you don't need the balanced outputs, that's the only thing, is you don't get balanced outputs. They're single-ended outputs. So if you don't need a two-box solution and you just want to go with a receiver, I would probably go with the AVRX8500, and then later down the road, maybe add a really nice 2-channel power amp and still use the internal amplification, because you got a big power supply on that receiver. It should power all your other speakers, just fine. And it's a little bit cheaper. It's $4,000 as opposed to $4,500 for the Marantz. So yeah, it's a good option. Let me see what else we have here. How do you guys like Direct Live? We already talked about that. Love the streams. Are you thinking about doing a video on Odyssey? Someone's asking if we're thinking about doing a video on Odyssey multi-EQ editor. Yes, I am going to do one after I see the update that they claim they're going to have. I don't want to do one now and then have to do another video. That's going to be kind of annoying to have to go through a calibration twice. Is Anthem coming out with an updated receiver? We don't know. I haven't heard anything. I'm guessing they will. They can't be complacent after 4 years. So with everybody else coming out with new products. Let's see.
Is the Yamaha going to be your daily driver?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I like the 5100 a lot. I'm gonna continue on with the 5200. I'm waiting to see what happens with Monoprice's processor that's going to be based on the datasat. I like what's coming out with that because they have the ability to do more advanced base management than you can get in many of these Japanese products. I don't know if it has the on-screen overlay or not. That's kind of, I might have to get over that if I want to do more advanced base management in my setup. You can't usually do that with these kind of products, so you need something specialty like the datasat. So the fact that Monoprice is coming out with a datasat-like processor for only $5,000, and it's a proven design, you know, there's no major bugs in it as far as I know. That might be the next processor I take a look at and possibly change my Yamaha out for if I like how it operates. Let's see. I had 3 used receivers failed, HDMI, even a Marantz preamp and an older Yamaha receiver. They both worked perfectly except the HDMI. Yeah, I mean, nothing's perfect. Let's see what else we have here. There's a lot of questions here. Techno Dad says hello. Let's see. One thing that frustrates me is a lack of MQA support on any current products and Blu-ray players. Yeah, you know, I use, I've got a home automation system with Control 4 that has Tidal and MQA support on it. I'm not sure if any of the streaming boxes like Amazon or Apple TV offer MQA support or not. I haven't really looked into that or not. What do you use, Shane, when you do your streaming?
I use Qobuz, either directly from my PC into the processor, or Chromecast audio can do up to 96K.
Gotcha.
Speaking of which, I should have the Golden Ear review coming possibly next week.
Oh, you're doing a, what tower are you doing?
The Triton 5s.
Nice.
Yeah. So Cambridge sent me their Edge series. Are you familiar with the Cambridge Edge?
I looked at them. I haven't really dug too deeply, but I remember seeing them, yeah.
Super nice, super nice.
Nice. I'm looking forward to that. What about Emotiva? Are their AV receivers any good these days? Well, they don't really have any released AV receivers right now. I know they're working on a receiver that's going to use Class D amplification with the Pascal modules, which are awesome modules. This last time I checked. We'll see if that actually comes out. Let's see. What do you think the consequences of Sound United acquiring Onkyo and Pioneer for audio video space? Is the rumor true? It's not a rumor. We actually talked about that, and it's happening. And I think I went over the pros and cons. So in the video, I probably will do another video about Sound United when I get back from the event next week that I'm attending to give you guys some updates on. I'm kind of curious to see what happens with that. Okay, someone says I have an Emotiva XPA Gen 2 amp. I'm looking to replace my UMC processor. Looking at the Anthem AVM60 as possibly a good receiver. Would you appreciate your thoughts? Well, any of these processors that we discussed here are all good options depending on, you know, what feature set you're looking for. So I would definitely strongly consider those.
But don't forget to, if you guys want to pick up any of these, Gene's going to leave some links in the description as well.
Yes, yeah, I definitely will. If you can't hear anything below 20 hertz, is there any point in correcting it? Yeah, I think there's definitely a point in correcting it. First of all, when your room modes tend to be a little bit higher, maybe 25 hertz, you're still going to have to do some correction below 20 hertz to get it. If it's usually room modes at those low frequencies are pretty low Q, so you need a pretty wide filter to correct them. Even though you can't hear below 20 hertz, you can feel it. And if you want to take an example of that, you take the movie like Dark Knight Rises, and when Batman is taken off in his Batwing, in that one scene when the cops are chasing him, in my system, I actually feel my spinal column shake. That's how much bass. I've got 5 subs in my room, and I don't hear anything as much as I feel literally my spinal column shaking. And I ran some test tones to see what frequency that was at, and I think it was right around 16 or 17 hertz. So if you've got the output down there, man, and you've got content, some of the content it's out there. You get some pipe organs that could go down that low as well. Why limit yourself?
Have you tried the Edge of Tomorrow intro?
No.
Come on, Gene, you gotta pick that up.
Oh man, that's a James Bond movie, right?
No, it's one with Tom Cruise. Where he goes, it's like Groundhog Day.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I'm not as up to date as you are in movies, man.
It's an old movie.
Oh, okay. See, I'm really out of it. Technodad asks if I'm going to be in New Orleans. Yes, I am. So I guess you are too. So I get to meet you finally. Okay, I'm going to answer one last question, and then I think we're going to wrap it because it's almost 1 o'clock here. And another processor needed for a combination Marantz 8012 Emotiva for 11.2.6, or just simply getting an 8500. Just get the 8500. If you're going to go beyond 11 speakers, that's the 8500 or the 8805 are going to be your best choices there. I've not looked at Yamaha. Based on this conversation, I'm going to take a look. Yeah, I'm telling you guys, the Yamaha's a sleeper. The thing about the Yamaha I also like is if you don't want the 5200 processor, their 3080 receiver is like $2,000. It's cheaper than the flagships from Marantz and Denon. Well, the Denon 8500 is an exception because that's a 13 channel. But the Yamaha, it only has 9 channels internal amplification, and I kind of like that, because they have the same size chassis and a huge power supply going to 9 channels, and the thing weighs like 40 pounds, but they give you balanced outputs on the front channels. And I think about it, if you're only going to spend $2,000 on that receiver as opposed to $3,000 on the Marantz SR8012, which I have, I love the Marantz SR8012. But if I was on the market now, I would probably get the Yamaha 3080, especially if I'm not doing Oro 3D. I would get the 3080 for $2,000 and then put $1,000 towards a 2-channel amp from like Monoprice or from Outlaw, and use that for the front channels, like a 300 watt amp. And I would take that combination over the Marantz SR8012, and it'll be right at about the same price. So Yamaha, don't just discount them, because they have some logic in what they're doing with their models. And like I said, that 5200 is no frills at all. That's a serious processor if you're limiting yourself to 11 channels or less. So I think that wraps it up. Guys, Shane, thank you for being here. I appreciate you wasting your Friday night on YouTube with us. Guys, check out Shane's YouTube channel at Spare Change. I love your movie reviews, man. And I like that video you did where you compared the fast food sandwiches.
That didn't go very far.
that was entertaining. So I appreciate you being here. We love Shane. He's doing some video reviews for us as well. I appreciate the help there, Shane. Guys, check out our Patreon channel, patreon.com/audioholics. Become a member. You get access to unique content that we put on there before we put it on the editorial site. You could suggest video topics for us to cover. And we also started an Amazon branded store. I'm trying to get into this Amazon stuff. As much as I'm not a huge Amazon fan, I know people look for that. We're going to put recommended products in there. If we review stuff, we'll put it there for easy buy now links for you guys. And that wraps it up for this week. Give us some suggestions down below what you want us to see do live next Friday. If I'm available next Friday, I'll probably come back on, and we'll get Shane on here again after he does some more speaker reviews, and we'll do a roundup on that. Well, my friends, until next time, keep listening.